Welcome everybody to Lead Like a Boss. I've got a great guest for you tonight, Hasaean Jackson. She has a great background in human technology in business. We're going to learn a lot from her. Hasaean, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me here today, George. I appreciate this opportunity.
We're so excited and we want to dig in right away. I know you're all about the human factor, but I know you've got an extensive background in the corporate world. Can you give us a little bit of a background on where you come from in the corporate world?
I worked in, direct marketing. I always forget the name of the industry, but I started off in direct marketing, and actually I was a consultant. And I progressed from being a consultant in direct marketing to consultant in aviation, and then moved on to be in leadership roles as a director in aviation for developing airport development improvement plans. And then I progressed to actually working in the government, managing mission support operations. So those are all the things that people never want to know about: payroll and workers' comp and real estate, all the things that people go, oh, I don't even want to be by the employee relations, IT. I managed all those departments for over 20 years.
All right. I wanted our guests to get an understanding of where you come from, because your background is extensive and touched a lot of different operational departments, but of course you have to manage a lot of people and get all of these folks rowing in the same direction in order to reach your objectives, and that's something that every business operator struggles with. So I think we're going to get a lot of value out of this discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Now, you're an author, you're a coach. Talk to me about some of your educational background that helped you to equip you for this role, the role that you're in now.
Well, actually, it started off when I was 13 years old. I met my gym teacher, who was only 4 feet 9 inches tall. I mean, she was something. She was a pistol. Because I used to walk home from school with a little folded up sheet of paper in my hand. And one day she caught me in gym class and she said, "Get over here. Let me talk to you." She said, "What are you doing with your life?" And I was like, looking at her going, what is she talking about?
How old were you?
I was 13,
Oh my.
So,
okay.
So in my book, I talk about it extensively on how my environment dictated what I saw. And that's why I'm a big person for not looking at what you see in front of you, but looking with your spirit. And so because of her, she launched me on the path to really understanding that there was more in me and more in life. And so that's why I am what I'm doing today, because I want to share that same thing with other people, that you cannot allow your environmental systems to hold you back or to dictate what you can do, and allow that potential within you to really blossom and be used and maximized.
Environmental systems. Okay, I want to learn more about that. We're going to get into that in a heartbeat now. So you have a master's degree in?
I have a master's degree in finance, and then I'm actually pursuing now a master's degree in human services.
Wow. Okay. So again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm trying to help everyone understand that where you're coming from is a hardcore business background, right? Because I know that some leaders, when they hear about the topic we're going to dig into in a minute, they say it's woo-woo, or they say it's like it's all fuzzy, and they shy away from digging into the value of it. And I'm hoping that after this discussion, they'll understand that the two things are compatible. You can be a business-focused, results-focused, numbers-focused leader, but you can also add value by focusing also on the human aspects of managing people. So let's dig into that as well. Okay, now the 3 areas, according to my notes here, that you like to focus on in your okay, well, before we jump ahead, because I'm skipping things here now. So you got into the corporate world, right?
Correct.
And you turned the page because you're not in the corporate world anymore. What happened? How do we go from that to this? What made you change gears?
I have to practice what I preach. So every day at that cycle that says, that commercial that said the woman got up, she made coffee, she fixed breakfast, she went to work, she came home, she ate dinner, she went to bed, and that's all she did. The cycle just continued.
Oh
And
yeah, that doesn't sound like any fun.
yeah, it was boring. So my job, I actually was not, I felt I wanted to be impactful and really help people to see themselves and see their potential. I mean, finance is good. I really love to look at the numbers and make the numbers and get them to massage them to get what people are trying to achieve. But at the end of the day, I'm about that person. I'm about that person that I want to add value to and who I know is valuable as well. And when I work in an environment where people are devalued and they're not recognized and respected, the more and more I became unhappy and just I was in despair and angry at myself because I was sitting there in this environment when I knew that I could instead put my energies to help people to really become the person that they could become and not allow their environment to dictate and hold them down.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you 100%. I mean, when did we get to that point where the numbers mattered more than the people? Like, when did we get to that point where, the numbers dictated why we did what we did rather than the interactions that we have with the people that are in our organizations or our stakeholders or clients or suppliers, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on and on about that, but
yes.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so you decided to make a move. You weren't happy, obviously, with where you were. You weren't happy with the impact. You weren't happy with the environment, and we're going to get into that because I want to understand what you mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do? I mean, what did you grapple with in order to, or how did you make the decision? You're a woman who knows how to calculate the numbers and calculate the strategy. What was that process like for you to leave the corporate world and go out on your own?
Well, you have to develop an exit strategy. And that's what I did.
Ah,
So I actually started in my business 5 years before I knew I was going to leave. So I wrote my first book, then I wrote my second book, and then my third book. I actually attended different trainings. I'm a John Maxwell coach, so I attended his training. And then I just continued to get out here. I built my business up, did all the things that are required to form and create a business, start networking and joining different organizations and serving, because I believed that a leader is a server. So I'm actually in Toastmasters. I serve on my Tinley Park board. I'm in the Homewood Flossmoor area, and I serve well in my church. And I'm also serving in other organizations where it's really the focus is on the people, on how we can help people get to the next level in their life, not just surviving, but focusing on how they can be significant. Because we can all, I shouldn't say we all, because as you look around in this world, the systems that I talk about is how people think, their biases, and the culture that we're in, and our family and our faith and our friends. We allow them to dictate what we can do. So I want to help people break through those barriers to really surround themselves with people who lift them up and get into systems that build up their vision and hold them and hope them. I shouldn't say hold them, because I was going to say hold them, be accountable, but I hate the word accountable, but really be a driving force behind someone, because there's nothing, I think accountable is a bad word. What you want to do is really have a partnership and a collaboration.
I mean, what's that expression that we know, we're told, our parents told to us all the time, right? You birds of a feather flock together, right? If you're in an environment that is supportive of your values, your vision, and your mission, it's a lot easier for you to get there. But if you're surrounded by people who don't share your vision, mission, and values, then you're swimming against the current, and it's just going to be difficult.
And that's what I was doing. I was swimming against the current because, my supervisors would say, well, just keep piling work on these, on my team members. And I would really go to bat with them and say, no, they've had enough. And that person, why can't we instead get some more people or move around this workload? So at the end of the day, people matter. And if you give people what they want, they'll give you what you want. I believe that.
Yeah. And then there's another thing, when you talk about that, I always think about how, when you look at startups, how they they're so much faster. They progress so much faster. They're so much more effective than some of these big organizations. And a lot of it has to do with their small teams. They care about each other, they support each other, and they're very driven, right, to achieving this goal. And but then once an organization gets to a certain size, they lose that, and then people become numbers and objectives and targets, and they stop being people, right? They stop being your friends that you started this thing with.
And I do understand that you can't stay friends. Don't get me. I mean, I shouldn't say you that there's friendship, but then there's business. I mean, that's what you should say. However, if those people are truly your friends, they'll understand that there's friendship and then there's business, and that we have a mission that we're working on together, and that we all have to do our part. That's what it's. But if I do my part by giving you what you want, let's say, for instance, if you have aspirations to go get your master's, me as the owner, why don't I create some kind of, program, tuition reimbursement, or if I can't do tuition reimbursement, maybe some kind of way that you're,
or flex time, even flex time,
flex
so you can
time. I
get
was
to your
gonna say
studies.
flex time.
Yeah.
Because giving you that opportunity to help you better yourself. But understand that at the end of the day, these tasks that you have to do here in your job still have to get done in that flex time that you have. But I'm giving you the chance. Maybe you work from 8 to 12, and then from 12 to 4 you go to school.
Yeah.
And then maybe you go back home and you can telework from 4 to 6 or whatever, but we work it out to reach some compromise so that both sides are getting what they want. And that's what we're missing. It's all about me and the bottom line, and it really is going to hurt and hinder the growth of the company as well as the person.
Yeah, I think I don't know who I read it from, but the idea of matching the mission of the organization to the mission of the individual in the organization, so that the two are aligned, and that it's a win-win for both. I think of like UPS, for example. UPS has a mission that's tied to the Olympics, and so they have a good relationship with athletes, and so a lot of athletes tend to gravitate to that organization because their missions are similar, right? And you can see how those two things align, and it suits both of them. It's a win-win for both the organization and for the individuals that are in the organization. So it's
right. I mean, even now with the fact that we have multiple generations, I mean, we talked about this briefly before we got on about the big resignation. But if we were to, like, the mindset of the Generation Z's, it's not about I need to make money, because money does not their driving force.
Not as much.
Their driving force is, what is the cause, and what am I in this for?
Yeah, what's the impact?
Right, and the impact. So if all you're worried about is the bottom line, and they're worried about the cause and impact, you guys are not meeting. So you have to figure out a way. So there's one organization that offers the flex time, because they're saying, okay, this is what I need to do here, but what is it that you want? And let's come together and we can both accomplish what we need in the time that you work here.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of organizations who want to be able to do that, but they don't know the model. Like, they don't have a model to follow. The model that we've followed traditionally, the whole 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, whatever you want to call it, right? That model is the model that they're used to, and you report to your desk and you do your work, and then you leave at lunchtime, you come back and you go home. That model is just a model that is so ingrained.
It's archaic. It's archaic. It's gone.
but even long before COVID and long before, you look at the well-run organizations, and they didn't need to see a person sitting at a desk to know if they were doing what they were needed to do, like that they were adding value, because they had metrics, they knew what was going on, and they had KPIs and all those things that they didn't have to worry about it. They knew what was going on. And I think that's something that organizations need to work on harder, in terms of giving their people metrics that they can see and know that they're doing their job well, they're meeting their objectives. It's just not pleasing the boss this week. It's about, I've done what I'm supposed to do, right? For knowledge workers, I mean, if you're working in a factory and you got to put out so many widgets, well, that's kind of easy. But for knowledge workers, it's not so easy.
But the other thing is, what you bring a point on is that why do we have to do it A, B, C, D? Why don't you just tell me what it is that you want, what the end result is, and let me come up with my methodology for getting the project completed. See, when you try to force people to do it the way that you want, then again, you're hindering them, but also you're on both sides, because they might have a better way and a better method than what you were giving them.
Yeah.
Why is it always got to be the Hasaean way? Why can't
Yeah.
it be the George way? And then we come where we talk and we say, okay, this is how I did this. Now, let's compare our methodology. And you might even learn something. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, let's face it. I think even in larger organizations that are well organized, I think it's often the case that like lower level management, director level, for example, they may not even have a clear understanding of what the objectives of the organization are, or what they're, I mean, they may have this high level, oh, we need to put out X amount of, widgets, or we need to do X amount of volume of sales, or we need to create X amount of production, but they don't have a clear idea of how they're going to do it or how they're going to get there. And they just take a flyer and they say, okay, we're going to go do it this way. And they just get everybody, going in one direction, but they have a very limited idea as to whether or not they're going to actually, get there until quarterly earnings report comes out. And then they realize, oh, we missed our targets. It's like, they don't have enough of a granular idea of all the steps that it takes to reach a successful conclusion. And I think more work needs to be done in that, but we digress. Okay.
We could be on this topic all day, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Okay, so you talked about the Great Resignation, and I know you're doing a lot of work with helping individuals to look at their long-term planning. I mean, the methodology that you used, I mean, it sounds like something right out of a book. You had this 5-year plan, and you knew exactly what you were going to do, and it's like you exited, boom, ready to go, and it's textbook. So how do you get, or what do you do, or how do you approach someone, or when someone comes to you and says, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, I'm not sure I'm in the right spot, blah, blah, blah. How do you go from that to a 5-year plan? How do you work with someone in that situation?
Well, first, I send them a questionnaire because I want to understand, and you need to understand, what is your why? What's your purpose? So let's start there. And when we delve in, what is that gift that you have that you could do all day long, and what's something that you enjoy doing, or what sets you on fire? So we really need to uncover that. So based on that, then we develop a strategy for you getting involved in those areas, on a consistent basis, so that you can get more entrenched. But then you're
talking like getting your feet wet. You're talking like a side hustle or something like that.
Or even maybe if it's not being an entrepreneur, maybe you're going to work with someone else who is in the business that you want to work in. Maybe you ask them to be your coach. I mean, their mentor or something. There's ways to get in the connection. We're not all set out to be entrepreneurs, and I would never tell anybody that.
Really? Come on. You know me. I think everyone's an entrepreneur, but that's just.
I know, but some people not. So I don't want to ever hear. Well, they'll turn off and say, "Oh, they only gonna talk about entrepreneurs." I'm gonna click. But
yeah, you're right. If someone wants to take a course, for example, they want to explore, maybe their artistic creative side, right? They can just take courses. They don't have to. It doesn't have to be about creating a business. Absolutely.
Right. Or maybe like I was talking to someone who wants to get into broadcasting. Okay, make a connection with the radio station, a TV station, to see how you can come in there and work. And if they're not willing to hire you, maybe you have to volunteer. There's nothing wrong with volunteering.
Like that.
Right. You have to be willing to put in the time. You have to be willing to sacrifice. Everything is not going to be a monetary reward, because it's not all about money. It's about really that intrinsic value that you're going to get. But then we start off there, and then continuing to take consistent steps to really get you out of there. And maybe your plan might not be 5 years, maybe it's 3 years, but we developed that plan, that exit plan, to get you moving into the direction of where you want to go.
So what kind of tools do you use to help people to deal with the resistance? Because there's always resistance. Whenever you're talking about changing, your lifestyle, or making a big change to your routine, even, there's resistance. Even if at some point your heart wants it or your head wants it, there's usually some kind of a conflict going on, right? Or as you were talking about environment, right? Because if your environment, your environment could be pushing you one way or the other. So how do you help people to break through that resistance, whether it's internal resistance or external resistance?
Well, we really have to focus on our mindset. So I'm a big person that believes in reflecting and meditating.
Okay.
So in coaching, because through the coaching process, we will identify steps and actions that you can take on a regular, consistent basis. The thing is that each day you will monitor your time, monitor those actions. So I'm a firm believer that you have to identify at least one big action that you need to take for that week. I know we always say that.
Rocks,
right.
rocks,
so I think about, for me, my big action was to really start writing. I was sending out daily word, messages to people on a consistent basis. And I still do it now. I do a weekly word now instead of a daily word. People can sign up for it. We can talk about that later. But the point is that then I started writing each day towards my book. And then the next step for me was to reach out and find a publisher. The next step was for me to then develop myself in social media. Then the next step from that was to, get my business. And now, to continue that progression down the road of what my focus is. And my whole focus is to help you meditate, reflect, take action, evaluate that action, and then come back and rinse and repeat that process, because everything is recycles. You're not going to just meditate today and reflect today and think that you have all your answers. It's a continual process with that, taking the action, evaluating the action, and then coming back. So every week on Sundays, you need to evaluate what you're doing and the progress that you're making, and understand that progress is not going to be monumental. It goes back to the person who wants to lose weight. Okay, that you sat there and you put on weight over a period of time. The same thing is going to happen for you to get that weight off over a period of time. But writing my book wasn't published in a day. It took me maybe 6 to 8 months to get my first book out.
Wow, that's impressive. 6 to 8 months is amazing. That's
right. But but it was a process.
And that's while you were holding down your job.
Right. That was why I was holding down my job too. So the whole thing is,
hear that?
But it's just taking those actions that you have to be committed, determined, and have that tenacity, and there's sacrifice. You have to be willing to sacrifice. Yeah, we want to have fun and we want to do those things, but you have to segment your time. Okay. Yes, I work a job. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm talking to a business executive. Let's say he's got and let's say 10 employees. He's got a $2 million gross sales service business, and typical situation, little stressed out, time's not being managed properly, bunch of responsibilities all over the place, and they're saying, this isn't, is this all there is? Is there something I can do to change this? Am I in the right spot? All those types of things. And you sit down with them and you say, okay, now you're going to meditate. How do you cross the bridge from somebody who's never meditated before, doesn't believe that there's any value in it? How do you help them understand the value of doing that?
Well, I'll give them some questions really to meditate upon. So you have to have a focus. So just like in this person you're talking about, they're saying that they don't have enough time. First of all, I would ask him to track his time for, let's say, a week. Track how you're utilizing your time Monday through Friday for a week. And then let's see how you are really making progress and actually what you're completing. Because a lot of times we think that it takes 8 hours to get something done. And we all know it doesn't take 8 hours. It might take it.
I'm laughing because whenever I face this, I tell people, okay, think about the last time you went on vacation. You're going to go on vacation for 2 weeks. Think about that last week before, let's say you're leaving for vacation Saturday,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you look at the amount of work people do, and that last week on vacation,
Yeah.
and you compare it to the average of the previous 51 weeks, you understand what people can get done if they're properly motivated, right? But yeah.
It's so true. I mean, because we have angst. I mean, let's say, for instance, you have 20 things running through your head that you have to get done. And then you're getting worried and all distressed and distraught over it. But however, at the end of the day, if it might only take you 2 hours to do those 20 things.
Yeah.
But you're getting stressed out because you're focusing so much on the time. And while you're wasting that time focusing on the time you don't have, you could have got those tasks done, right? So if you're sitting there lamenting over, I only got 2 hours and I got 20 things to do, I'm telling you, you probably could get them 20 things done in an hour, and you sit back there in amazement talking about all that time I wasted.
Okay, this is fun and I love it, and we're right, but there's a lot of hardcore managerial science here, right? For example, when people want to do something, they find a way. When people don't want to do something, they find an excuse. Like they find a reason not to do it, right? And that's really the key. When someone is really motivated to do something, you don't need to push them to do it. They find the time to do it. They make the time to do it. And so really the key here for everyone, I was going to say for business owners, entrepreneurs, but for everyone really, is to really understand what it is that you want to do. And that's where the meditation comes from. You gotta do that deep dive into your mind and your heart to figure out what it is that really turns you on. And then the motivation and the time management just comes naturally.
But the other thing is you need to change the perspective that you have on that task that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So think about that. Because let's say, for instance, reading. I'm going to school now. And some of the chapters are boring, and some chapters, they've set me on fire. However, I know I have to read. So I will set a goal that, this chapter is boring, but I'm going to read at least 20 chapters today. Don't sit there and try to take the whole thing into 50 pages. It might be 50 pages total I have to read. Then read 20 today and 20 tomorrow. Break it up.
Yeah.
So it's how you view the task and your perspective. But then also I think about this chapter may be boring, but I know there's something I'm going to get out of it. So now then I'm going to play a game with myself to say, what is it that I can learn from this? So this perspective that you have.
Yeah, it's almost a gamification strategy for sure. 100%. Yeah, you're challenging yourself. And I think that's also the benefit of meditation. So I meditate as well, but I think mastering your mind is one of the important aspects of meditation that a lot of people who don't have experience with it don't understand, because that ability to push that part of your brain aside that says this is boring and say, look, I get it. I know you think it's boring, that part of your brain, right? But I'm in charge here and I'm going to focus you and I'm going to get you through this chapter or this next few chapters. That ability comes from meditating, or it's certainly supported through meditation, because focusing your mind on achieving a specific task.
And of course, because like, for instance, for me, before I start my day, I start my day in quiet time, getting focused on what are the tasks that I need to do. I identify those tasks that I need to do. I mean, it's just the way I and if I don't get the time to meditate, well, I don't. I mean, there's no excuse. I'm going to have time to meditate. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And I'm mapping out in my mind what it is I need to get done. And then I recite some things to keep me focused, that I can do this. Whatever positive affirmations you need to say to yourself, that's what you do. And then you go do them. And then let's say, I'm going to set aside these 2 hours. And that's how you stay committed to taking those actions. Yeah. And you'll be amazed to see what you get done.
I think it's almost epidemic that most people are in reactive mode during most of their day. they're reacting to someone else's priorities. It's voicemail, it's email, it's all the various, messaging that we're getting from. It's always other people's priorities that are vying for time in your day, and then you're constantly going back and forth, right? And what I'm hearing you say is, okay, that's fine, that stuff needs to be dealt with, but you must first do this. Like, you must first make sure you've got this stuff done, and then you can worry about the other stuff, right?
Correct. I mean, no. I mean, and I understand that there's some things that come up, don't get me wrong, but I set the priority because I am in control of my time.
Yeah. Yeah. And most people will say they're not. Most people will say, oh, my boss is in charge of my time, or my clients are in charge of my time, or or a variation on that theme. But that's not true. Your clients, your boss, they don't care about your time. They only care about the result. They only care about what they're getting out of their transaction.
Right. So I look at myself when I was in the corporate world, and I would be in a staff meeting, and my supervisor would say, well, I need this and this done today. The words just say, okay, you can go back to your office and your time is still your time. He didn't say you had to go back to your office and the first thing you do when you get back to your desk is
drop everything else. Drop everything else.
Like you said, George, the point is that you get the task done. I'd go back, and if I was something else that I was working on, I would get that done and then go to that task. Now, if it was something that was on fire, because things do happen, maybe there was someone that we had to get a letter of removal done because they were sitting out there at the front and we wanted to immediately make sure, then of course, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some things you have that's not negotiable on. However, you are in control of what you do.
Those are exceptions. They're not the rule.
Right. But you are in control of what you think and what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a thing called accomplishment bias, right? And a lot of people, a lot of us, I put myself in that group as well. We fool ourselves into thinking that because I got X and X done, good for me, right? But you got it done, but was it the most important thing for you to have gotten done today, or this week, or whatever, right?
Yes.
Just checking it off a box saying it got done gives us this sense of accomplishment, but it could be a false sense of accomplishment because it's not the right thing. You didn't do the right thing.
You're so true, because I think about, I mean, even for me, and it happens even during the day. I remember someone sent me an email message, and they said, well, Hasina, I need you to send me a bio with a shortened bio. However, there was other things I need to do for the day. Now, I said to myself, that's not the priority to send her an updated bio. That meeting is not till Monday. Today, Monday, a week from Monday. So it wasn't that same Monday. Today is Tuesday. I can get her that bio by Friday.
Yeah.
Continue doing what you need to do. Don't get sidetracked by someone else stepping into your plans where it's not a priority. You set the priority for your time.
Yeah.
It's all about prioritizing the actions that you need to take that's going to move the needle to where you need to see the progression.
Right, 100%. And I think, I mean, I don't want to get into generalities, but I think some generations are more able to do that than others. I think some generations are so socially connected and socially tied together. The idea of letting someone down or not giving a response immediately is difficult for some because they're just so used to this instant communication back and forth that it kind of fractures their focus, and there's this constant like doing little things but not a big thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think, and it might not be a generation, it might be a people pleaser. Instead of a generation, you are more of a people pleaser than really taking care of what you need to get done for yourself. And so you have to understand that it's okay to say no. I loved it. It was one day I was in church, and they were having an event, and a woman came up to the table where we're signing up people to attend the event, And she says, hey, I remember, she said, hey, Sue, I didn't get to talk to you. You know what? You should come to this event. And the woman smiled. She said, no, I have enough. I have other things to do. It's okay to say no. And I loved it. I was like, I applauded the fact that she said no, but said it with a smile. It's okay.
Oh yeah.
Learn how to say no. Because
100%.
if you continue to say yes, you are going to get bogged down doing things that you have no business doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I got to remember the titles of these books, but there's that, I can't remember which book, but it talks about the monkeys, right? So, you know, when you're a leader and one of your people come in with a problem, they got a monkey on their back, right? And they want to take that monkey off their back and put it on your back, right?
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And the idea, like, no, I'm not taking your monkey. You take your monkey with you, and you go find a solution for your thing. I'll support you, but I'm not taking on your monkey, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people have to learn, that you're not helping your team if they have a problem and you just take on that problem for them and you deal with it, right? Because
Totally agree. I had that same mindset. I managed a team, and they would come to my office. You know, people would come and they'd have that monkey, like you say, and they want to leave it in there. But I said, no, what we're going to do is identify the actions that you can take to solve that issue. But you're going to take it back out of here with you, and you're going to continue with that monkey to feed it and bathe it and clothe it. And then you come back in with the monkey all happy, but it's not going to become my monkey. And they appreciated that. At the end of the day, every person on my team would say, you know, you helped me grow. You would guide me in the directions that I needed to take, but you would not do my work. No, I'm not going to do your work.
Yeah. That I think people get confused that helping, there's different ways to help, and that kind of helping, taking on someone else's monkey, is not really helping.
No, it's not. And you're really hindering that person from growing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're going to always come to you to do their work because they have someone that's going to handle them remaining comfortable, because they're comfortable with not stretching themselves and finding their own solution. So you're really hurting their progression.
Yeah. And there's no way an organization can scale if they don't develop that competency in their people. It's not going to happen.
And then you have some people who are in the wrong seats that you have to figure that out too.
Yeah.
And maybe that person is not in the right seat, and you need to move them somewhere else and put the person that is supposed to be in that seat there. So you have to make those tough decisions.
We can talk about that for
a
whole podcast, but you know. All right. Talk to me about seeing with spirit. What does seeing with spirit mean?
It goes back to just what we talked about earlier about having my exit plan.
Okay.
I knew that where I was, my physical site was really focused on working in this environment where I could not grow.
Okay.
You know, where I just felt hindered.
Okay.
But I had this vision in my spirit of me writing these books, owning my own business, getting out here speaking and training. And that's what I mean by seeing with spirit. I had that vision of what it is that I could become. And it took work. It wasn't right there in front of my face, but it was something that intangibly I could really put my arms around, because my whole being could embrace it.
Yeah, it's so important. You know, so in my practice, when I'm working with clients, you know, the visualization piece, you know, for some people, they resist it because they just don't understand it. You know, the whole woo thing kicks in. But I shared with them in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. He talks about I think it was Rockefeller, and how he would force his managers to write down their goals, like their personal goals, their business goals, like write them down, and he forced them to bring them to him, and they would discuss them, right? And he understood that people when you write something down, obviously you have to have a clear idea of it in your head before you can write it down, right? So that's a form of visualization. And he told them that if you write it down and you're specific about it, it's going to happen. But if you're kind of like vague about it, or you just have this just vague I'm not happy where I am type of a thing, you're never going to get out of that, right? And
Right.
that's what I'm hearing, the visualization, when you're talking about it. And I think people need to understand that it is a very scientific solution to the problem. It's not just ephemeral. It's there's science behind it, and it
Right.
works.
It does. If you whatever you think upon is what you will expand upon.
Yeah.
If you say I cannot do it, then that's what you're going to do, not do it. But however, if you put into your mind, because I love Napoleon's Hill, Outwitting the Devil. And in there, he talked about in that first chapter how he was dirt poor. He was living out there in the wilderness. He had no money in his pocket, but he had a vision. And he took all his money and gambled on his vision. And the last day is where he got the fruits of his labor. So understand, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take you being consistent, being persistent, being dedicated, and not allowing anything or anyone. You know, I love this quote that I live by. It says, don't let anyone or anything stop or quiet that small voice that says you were made for more. Believe that you were made for more.
Yeah. Why is it that we find it abhorrent when an adult talks to a child like that way? Like, you know, he talks to like a 5 or 6 year old and says, "Oh, you'll never be anything. You'll never amount to anything." We see an adult doing that to a child, and it's like, whoa, like, you know, we have a problem here. But yet we do it to ourselves all the time as adults.
Because it's learned behavior.
Yeah.
Because you just said it. Someone told you that, so you taught yourself that it's okay because you learned it. So now you're continuing the cycle by teaching your young ones the same thing. What you have to do is stand and believe in that I'm a winner. When someone tells you, first of all, I love what how does that person really have the authority to speak in your life? That's what you have to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Now, I wish your parents, I mean, my parents, I love them to death. And you know, but they had placed limitations on my life, but they didn't hinder me either from going forward. But in their mind, being comfortable, you know, only getting by surviving was what I should have strived for as well. But yeah. I met people, when I go back to when I say my systems, I met my gym teacher who introduced me to being more from what my parents had for me. So the whole thing is, if you're taught that, you have to then unlearn that to move forward. But you have to identify yourself that this is a ceiling that you've placed on your life, and then not allow that ceiling to remain there. And that's what I did for myself. I blew through that ceiling, and I'm still going to blow through a ceiling. I have a long way to go in my life. I'm not going to settle. I'm going to keep striving to be more, to be impactful, and to help make this world better.
Yeah, I think that's so right. I think that people, you talk about environment. I think that people, they hold themselves back by not associating with the right people, like the people that are more in line with what they want, and trying to compromise, like not saying goodbye or not limiting their exposure to people who are holding them back, and moving forward with, you know, the people who are further along the road than they are, you know, towards the objective that they want to have. Like if you want to have, like, you going for your second master's degree, right? So
right.
You know, if you were hanging around people who didn't see a value in higher education, that would make your task of getting your next degree probably a lot harder. But if you're around people who value education and think of education as a wonderful thing, well, it's going to make your experience that much easier. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be easier than if you're hanging around people saying, "Oh, what are you wasting time studying for? You know, come hang out with us, and, you know, you're working too hard," and all the rest of it, right? That environment is going to hold you back.
And you will have people. I did have people who told me that when I told them I was going back to school. Why are you going back to school? You know, but again, you have to limit that what you allow to come into your mind. You go, well, I'm going back to school because that's what I'm going to do, and move on. I mean, that doesn't make them a bad person. It's just the fact that they place limits on their life. Don't let their limits become your limits.
Yeah.
You keep moving. And that's the whole point. You have to have that mindset, like you said, George, who you surround yourself with. Surround yourself with the people that you know can help you grow.
Right.
not the people that are going to hold you back.
Yeah.
Your circle is very important. And I write about that in my books, about your circle. Your circle is very important.
And I think there's especially, well, I was going to say especially for young folks, but it's not true. It's everyone. I think that, like you were saying earlier about that people pleasing thing, I think people think that out of loyalty or out of these different types of idea that, these are my people, right? These are my people. So I have to be with my people.
Yes.
But at a certain point, you got to say, well, it's my life. I mean, those are my people, but this is my life. And what do I want to do with my life? Right? Do I want to be 95 and on death's door and then look back and say I didn't do what I was meant to do?
I mean, and it goes to, and I make this segue into the human services. Do you know the mindset of people that are in poverty is, they say, because people want to be that way, that people don't want to be poor. I mean, it's very sad. People are poor because of the things that are going on in society, but then you do have that peer pressure from people that are poor, like you just saying. They'll say, man, you don't want to get no home, just stay out here on the streets with us. So they have to break through those barriers too. So don't think that every homeless person that you see wants to be homeless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you do have the bad apples out there who are not homeless, who are on the sides of the street begging, but you can't allow, those people. But it's all about the mindset. If we can help each other to break out of those barriers that we've placed in our minds, people wouldn't be homeless too, and they wouldn't be going through the things that they're going through. We can help them identify the steps that they need to take to get out of their situations. But again, they have to want it too. Yeah. Like my husband said, they have to want it too.
And they have to believe that it's possible. I think yes. you mentioned, I don't know if you use the actual term, but you talk about limiting beliefs, right?
Yes.
We need to, those of us who have broken through some of those barriers, it's our obligation, our duty to help these people understand that it's safe to visualize, it's safe to dream, it's safe to have aspirations. You're not going to get hurt. I mean, baby steps, of course, but once they understand that they have a measure of control of what's going on in their lives, it becomes like that snowball rolling down a hill. It can get bigger and bigger and move faster and faster.
I mean, just going back to someone who's not able to take, who needs, let's say, $1,000 to move out of their home, and they think they got to have the $1,000 right now.
Yeah.
If you start $5 today, or $5 this week, and maybe next week you do 10. Yes, it's small steps, don't get me wrong. However, at the end of the day, you'll continue to see the progress over time. And maybe as you start doing the 5, it goes to 10, 15, 20, and it could be 100 at some point.
Yeah.
But you'll be amazed at just those small, consistent steps. And then we applaud ourselves for that. Look at our strengths and not our weaknesses. That's what we get so focused on. The things that we do wrong, instead focus on our strengths. Yeah. Let's lift up those strengths. And the weaknesses, surround yourself with the people who can do the things that you can't do. Stop, we have to stop beating ourselves down.
Boy. Amen. I love it. That's No, I'm serious. No, it's so easy for people to get caught up in the negative aspect of what's going on that they fail to see the positives. And that is so, and from a brain science point of view, everyone knows I'm a brain science junkie. The brain is designed to look for threats. I mean, that's what evolutionarily speaking helped us get to where we are today, right? And it's okay, and it's important. But we have to realize, and this is where the meditation helps, that that's not the only thing. I mean, it's important to identify threats and to be aware of them, etc. But there's another side. There's a flip side, and we don't spend enough time working on the flip side. And all the negative news and negative social media doesn't help, right? But again, it's a whole other topic. But helping people understand, and I think the meditation really has a big part to play in that. To focus on controlling what you're thinking about rather than letting the environment tell you what to think about.
Right. And that was the whole reason. That's why the books that I write is to help you in your meditation. I mean, I write daily word books, but then I write books that you then take time to answer some questions afterwards to send you into a guided reflection period where you think about the next step that you take for that day. Because the whole thing is to move you forward by thinking in your mind about what you need to be doing and not allowing the things on the outside to hold you back.
Love it. I love it. Okay, so as we're coming to an end here, and this is amazing, and we're definitely going to have more conversations on some of these other topics because there's a lot to unpack
Yes.
on some of them. Someone wants to reach you and engage with you, what's the best way?
You can go to my website, hsjackson.com.
Okay.
And I actually have a weekly nugget that you can sign up for, and you would join my mailing list. But there's also at the bottom, if you can email me. There's a direct way to email me. You can then get in touch and we can set up a 30-minute consultation complimentary session where we can talk about what are the next steps for you.
Beautiful.
How can you break through those barriers and break through those limits that you placed on yourself? But also, let's have a conversation, because that's what it's all about. I'm here to help you grow, to send you to higher planes and plateaus, because we need to break through that glass ceiling that we placed on ourselves to get to new levels.
Yeah. And I think it's regardless of where you are now. I mean, whether you're a student, whether you're struggling financially, whether you're a CEO of a corporation and you're just not happy, right? You're just not achieving what you think you're meant to be doing. That exercise is totally valuable.
Oh, yes. I mean, I think, to me, reflection is so necessary and vital. I mean, and also seeing not with what's in front of us, but really looking with our spirit and believing in what can be possible. Those are two big things that is my key focus in my life and what I enjoy to partner and help people with.
I love it. I love it. Well, Sina, thank you so much. All the information is going to be in the show notes. Links to your website and everything will all be in the show notes. I really encourage anyone listening or watching to take the time. It might open doors for you. It may not change your life overnight, but if it moves you down the road to even being happier with your current situation, why not? Right? Why not?
Of course.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And we'll see you very soon.
Yes.
Take care.
Take care, George.